one or number two
Okay.
largest.
No, it's okay. No, I think that was my fault.
Okay. So Eastspring currently the number one or number two largest in terms of equity AUM.
Yeah.
In Indonesia. And we have the flagship fund for mutual fund.
Yeah.
It's called Value Discovery, as well as Alpha Navigator. You can check it on the Bloomberg.
Okay.
It's listed in the Bloomberg. And the rest of our money is mainly discretionary fund. So it is not really open in terms of data to public.
Yeah.
We're managing private clients, institution mainly.
Yeah.
And in terms of strategy, it's nothing special. It's more on the process and our rigorous approach on investing in the
What approach
Indonesian
is
equity.
that?
Well, we have a solid research team.
Yeah.
And we're back at the regional as well. So the regional help us with a global outlook, and we have a grid system as well. Like those. Probably it's not my boundaries to talk about this because we have like different department. But I'm currently focusing on managing equity fund. But that is the basic picture about Eastspring.
Okay, nice. And so in terms of regional, I guess that's particularly in Indonesia, is it? Or is it in the ASEAN as a whole?
Well, currently we are mostly investing money in Indonesia.
Okay.
But the regional support would be we will be operating on different LBUs. Yeah, so we have head office in Hong Kong and Singapore.
Yeah.
They have their operation. They are very big as well. I think they mostly Asia. They have in Japan. They are running their own fund. So what we do is foreign investors or local money that wants to invest in the Indonesian equity market would be putting their money in Eastspring Indonesia.
And what's your kind of macro overview of Indonesia? I know there's a lot of positives about it, the nickel, etc. It's a growing economy with a relatively low GDP that's got massive potential. Just the pure size of Indonesia as well often gets omitted. What's your view on that, and why do you think now is a good time for Indonesian equities? Because I think it's great personally, but what's your view?
Well, I would like to note this is my personal view, not the house view.
Yeah, sure.
This is not exactly I mean like a formal meeting. It's just introduction. So my personal view would be Indonesia is actually the best place after India, probably, going forward.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and if you look at the global picture first, so we are in the new environment, economic environment, where interest rate is now on the positive territory, which we have not been experiencing that for the last 10 years. We are always accustomed to zero or negative interest rate. So economic growth will be important. Real investment will be important. So if we look at the GDP growth trajectory, if I would like to divide the global picture into three area, just Europe is the worst because they have energy crisis and they are not able to secure or get new supply in the next coming years. Even they just signed with Qatar on the gas supply, but it will be in 2026.
Yes.
And they're like Yeah, it's they're
ESG
lacking of
doesn't come overnight, and neither does the
exactly,
nuclear.
exactly. They're stuck with their extremity on the ESG. They forgot about the transition process. So Europe is the worst place.
Yes, I agree.
US, I think they're in the middle. They have some potential, but they have also a lot of challenges.
Yes.
And one thing that I highlight about US is their lack of labor. So if you watch all the debates globally in the investment podcast, the argument in inflation camp, there are only two arguments. One is quantitative argument, which is very, very basic. You're talking about money printing. It's very calculated. The other one would be they're blaming it on energy and commodity prices. But one thing that I rarely heard is about their labor, because if we trace back into the Trump administration, they have basically stopped their immigration, and it's difficult for people to just go to the
They
US.
have more jobs than there is people, and yet the kind of
so it's a
for
simple problem.
For a recession
Yeah,
environment, you actually need to decrease the labor force, and this is what they're having problems with to tackle this inflation problems. And at the same time, how do you tell someone that to combat inflation, you've got to lose your job? I think that's the hard part in both the US and Europe has got right now. But I completely agree with you on that. I've always said.
Yeah, so ultimately, US is a population problem at this moment. You can increase population using immigration, basically, right?
Yes.
And in Asia is the bright spot, while Indonesia is the brightest. Maybe I'm biased because I'm Indonesian, but at this moment, in terms of the country direction for in terms of business and economy, it's very clear. It used to be they're exporting raw commodities, and in the past, during the Jokowi administration, probably in the past 5 or 4 years, it has been proven that the country is able to change from a raw exporter into a commodity value add producer. So they are going down the line from recently. If you're following Indonesia, we have big business center in Morowali, Weda Bay, and they are actually producing steel, and it's very surprising for even myself as an Indonesian. As a country, we are able to export steel. We become a very big net exporter in steel. And in the past, if I remember, our biggest steel producer, which is Krakatau Steel, is importing the materials from Russia. We have the materials, but we are unable to produce it. Okay. And
can you just ask, that's one thing on the steel, but what about the kind of more technical side of things? So, for example, Tesla were looking to produce kind of lithium. Does Indonesia have the skills of the labor to produce more technical elements of that to really boost it out of the economic chain and really boost the economy?
In terms of labor quality, there is still a gap. But the government is solving this problem by partnering with the right corporation and countries. So, for example, the JV so far in making steel, which is based on nickel as a business, they're inviting the Chinese, and the Chinese are able to bring over their people, while transferring the technology. So why suddenly Indonesian government work with the Chinese more closely than in the past, where Indonesia is more closer to the US and the Japanese? It's simply because of the transfer of technology, and the Chinese are doing so. And during this period, going forward, there will be transition in terms of the Chinese labor, which is the much more skilled labor, into the Indonesian labor.
Okay.
And the government is also very quick in terms of pivoting. So initially, we have plenty of nickel, and they focus on producing NPI. And now NPI market and steel market is basically oversupply because of the slowdown in economy, the China situation, and the global situation. And they recently introduced, not recently, they are going to introduce soon an export tax on NPI.
Okay.
Okay. So they are giving incentive for these players to go down even further to the next stage, which is going towards the battery production. So they don't want the value add services to be just stuck at the NPI level.
Yeah.
That's why they are so basically they are planning to tax NPI as well as the class 2 nickel, and they will give more incentive on the class 1 nickel, which is for the battery.
Okay.
And in terms of battery components, we have plenty of nickel, but we are lacking of lithium.
Yeah.
And if you follow the G20
Yes.
recently, Jokowi, the president, has been very open and stating that, you know, we can work together with Australia, and Australia can build something or import or export their lithium to Indonesia. And geographically it makes sense, right? Because Australia is further away, Indonesia is closer away, in between of the big continents.
Yeah.
And that's the direction. Meanwhile, if you look at the local companies, now are racing to build motorcycle EV. It's a much simpler technology.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, for the cars, they leave it to at this moment, Hyundai is the most popular. The number 2 is Wuling, and I will not be surprised if there will be more Chinese players or even Tesla coming over in the future. And they will also introduce tax incentive for purchasing EV, probably next year. So in terms of motorcycle, I heard that the subsidy will be around 7.5 million, which is half the average of a typical motorcycle, which is around 15 million.
Okay.
Yeah. And the most important thing is that during this transformation from the ICE vehicles into electric vehicle, Indonesia will solve the forever economic problem that we ever have, which is the fuel subsidy. The fuel subsidy is always the drag in the Indonesian economy, but it's very sensitive politically.
Yeah.
So it's always been there and stuck. At the same time, Indonesia has been, I don't know whether it's a mistake or not, but they have been building a lot of power plants to provide electricity. So it's just so happened that even though it is still coal-based, we have plenty of electricity, and the government is under pressure due to their commitment into ESG to retire this power plant in the future.
Yeah.
It will take many years, but it is just
They're committed to a net zero ESG Indonesia.
Yes. So in terms of valuation, this coal power plant is worthless.
Yeah.
Right? But the government have a fuel subsidy problem. So the biggest benefit would be converting this cheap electricity, which we probably won't see in other countries, into fuel to fuel the electric vehicle. While if, let's say, the population able to convert their usage of ICE into BEV, it will solve the fuel subsidy automatically.
Really?
Because let's say I'm using ICE car now. If I buy a BEV, automatically I won't be using the fuel, right?
Yeah.
And there is no political obstacle to really debate on the parliament to just reduce the fuel subsidy. Meanwhile, we have very cheap electricity.
Yeah.
So it solves both sides of the problem. At the same time, you get economic growth from the electrical industry. We are the biggest raw material owner, and we are able to give the value add. That's the economic side. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
we are solving the fiscal side at the same time.
Yeah.
So this is the thing that I would be excited to see the most in the next probably 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's gifted in terms of its raw materials and what Indonesia's got in future in terms of raw materials. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to it's going to have economic prosperity. Look at the likes of Venezuela. I think it's how you deal with those. And do you think it has the kind of political stability and to deal with having the kind of luxury of having raw materials and then also divert the economy away, so it's not just reliant on kind of the raw materials and etc. What other kind of sectors has Indonesia got in the plan? I know it's had some of the best unicorns in the ASEAN region. It's one of the tech hub outside Singapore, so I know it's got a lot of sectors in it, but what's your thoughts on that?
Okay. On the political side, it is quite safe from my perspective.
Yeah.
Because so far it's still very fluid. They are still negotiating, and it is not clear who will become the president. But there are 3 popular candidates, and if you look at the background of the candidates, they are, I would say bluntly, they are business oriented. Okay.
Yeah.
Even though some of the candidates may play a role into Muslim conservatism, but
Yeah.
behind that, they're still realistic on the business side. Okay, these are the presidential candidates. Meanwhile, if you look at the backer of the political party, it has always been the same group of conglomerates that is pushing the economy and setting the direction of the Indonesian economy. And so far in Jokowi's administration, it is the best, probably synchronized between the business side and the government. Unless the risk would be only if conservatism takes over in terms of idealism in Indonesia.
Okay.
That's the worst. That's the only risk. But at this moment, during the Jokowi era, there is a lot of radicalism organization that has been banned, and the government is trying their best to keep the nationalistic approach and less of a religion, although religion is super important in Indonesia.
Yes. Yeah.
They are able to do that, so I don't see much problem in the direction of the country, even post the election.
Okay.
What else? Yeah, I don't see much risk or concern on that. And one thing also that I'm anticipating in the next 5 to 10 years, Indonesian economy has always been problematic with growth because we are unable to produce enough US dollar to fuel our economic growth.
Yeah.
Every time we grow past, let's say, 6% GDP level, we are at risk of burning our US dollar reserve.
Yeah.
But this time round, although it's still very short period, yes, we get benefit from the coal boom. In the future, the deficit, the current account deficit should turn into surplus going forward if we are able to transform, because we solve the fuel subsidy problem, which is oil import.
Yeah.
And will be the exporter of battery, which is it's already happening. Yes.
Yeah.
And there are three big industrial park that will focus on this front. which is the Weda Bay, the Morowali, and the North Kalimantan, the Kaltara Industrial Park, which is the largest green park in the world.
Yeah.
So they're planning to do that. Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't see much risk. Yeah.
That's super impressive. I think yeah, you're right. I do think Indonesia is probably one of the biggest EMs that's the brightest spark, probably with the exception of India. But India's always had that thing where it's time and it never really has been. Same with Brazil,
Mhm.
to a certain extent. And I think
If I may, yeah, if I may add a statement, it is the first time in my career that I can talk about Indonesia um, very positively, because throughout my career in the equity market, there's always been, ups and downs, and even if we have good story, but yes, there is a lot of risk.
yes, yeah, of course.
If the situation turn, but this time round, I see, of course, there is always risk,
Yeah,
but I see much more benefit and potential upside compared to the risk. Plus, if you look at other countries, there's not much big transformation in place. We are currently at at the, if I want to use the J curve,
yeah.
we are at the initial stage of rising. So I would be very excited to see when we accelerate further in the next 5 to 10.
And where does your fund primarily invest to make kind of the opportunities of the kind of Indonesian macro growth on that? Where is it
Yeah.
seeing potential?
In terms of fund positioning, the sector would be depending of the market condition, of course.
Yeah,
During the rising interest rate, although the metal space, for example, like the nickel, it's very attractive over the long term.
yeah,
We have to adjust our position. We are more heavy towards the consumer space now,
yeah,
because it is, in terms of risk return for next year, it is safe to say that we are uncertain on the global economic situation, on how it will impact on the Indonesian market.
yeah,
But at the same time, the Indonesian consumer has very strong earnings growth, double digit on average. Although the valuation is a bit pricey. Sorry. And earnings growth would be very valuable next year, because interest rate is high. At the same time, global economy is having recession. So double digit earnings growth is the best you can. It's not the best. It's the best option. It becomes scarcity.
yeah.
That's what we are looking at for the next 1 year.
Okay,
At this moment.
that's interesting. And just a quick fire question to put it on the spot. If you had $100,000, would you invest in Indonesian markets right now?
Oh, definitely.
For the 5 year time frame plus time.
Yes. I would bet a lot on Indonesia.
Yeah.
Uh, Even if I recommend my friends, I cannot invest myself, because I'm
Yes. Yeah.
tied to this personal conflict of interest.
Yeah. The
So
just the growth of
yes,
Indonesia and
yes. So personally, I recommend my friends, among my circle, to basically get back their money into Indonesia, because they invest in the US, and how magical the US market would be in the last 2 years, right? You see stocks like GameStop, the EV space, the Chinese EV, Tesla, it's all magical. But if you want to find another magical return, it would be in Indonesia.
yeah, I agree. I definitely don't think the US is what it has been for the last 30, 40 years. The S&P can't keep growing at the rate it has been doing. I think
Yeah.
I could be proved wrong, of course, and get pie on my face. But Indonesia and a few other countries, I think Vietnam, probably, and like you say, India are probably only a few of the ones that really do have potential. Philippines probably, but I don't think the Philippines will live up to it. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I definitely put some money in Indonesia right now.
The only advantage with that we don't have, if you compare with Vietnam, is the trade agreement with the US.
Yes.
Vietnam has that advantage.
Yeah.
Indonesia, from based on my network, they're still working on it.
But I'm
Yeah.
sure that will come in time.
Yeah.
You would
After
think
all,
so. It makes so much sense for the US
yeah. After all, we talk
and
about
you
money.
guys as well. And
Yes, as long as they can find win-win solution between the US and Indonesia, I think they will form a deal in
yeah,
the future.
and it must be, for example, the US and other countries are crying out for places to put factories and also businesses that are kind of located in China, just because of tensions, trade war, etc. And I think Vietnam's obviously a logical choice, but so is Indonesia for a lot of things. It's got a growing, reasonably educated and getting more educated population, so they can move factories and companies there. I think it's a great time to take for the US at least to take advantage of other places in the ASEAN region.
Yeah. And if you look at the government budget, a lot has been put into education. Although on the ground, I would say it is not as that optimistic as compared to the budget government allocate for education.
Yes.
But the transition and the technology transfer from China is working much faster than the normal education where you go through to school. The quality is still a challenge,
Yeah.
but the workers learning curve from the technology transfer would be faster.
Excellent. No, sure.
For
Well, and if people want to look up your funds, where can they do that? I guess they're all on Bloomberg.
yeah. Just type Spring Value Discovery on
Yeah.
Bloomberg.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. And we have